Well, my father was named Arthur Roland Eidson. He was the child of Roland Eidson, who was killed in the Civil War at the Battle of Atlanta. He was 31 years old when he was killed, and I have an army record of. Um, I, his his mother was from England, I think. I'm not real sure where in England, but his mother inherited quite a large tract of land north of Ward, along with her sister, and um, he was a pretty good farmer, and he also had a job delivering mail in the rural area of Ward. Ward is almost rural itself, and he had a wonderful reputation as being a nice guy and so forth, very honest and very hardworking and so forth. Uh, my mother was his fourth wife. Um, she was in her 30s when she married him. I guess he was in his 50s because he died at 63. My mother had come to Ward to care for her sister. Her older sister was married to Uncle Bob Strum, and she developed a disease called pellagra. Pellagra is a vitamin deficiency. In those days, they didn't know much about vitamins, They'd been paying attention to their diet. So they would eat not a lot of vegetables. It's mostly meat and potatoes, or meat and rice, and biscuits. Very, very meager diet. And because of that, she developed pellagra, which is a deficiency of vitamin B. And it's a horrible death. It really is. So while Mother was there, she met Arthur. And she ended up married, he for the fourth time, and she had all these kids from three different wives to care for her. So she was a busy girl and a good sport. And they all loved her. They really did. And well, let me tell you about him. His first wife was killed by a runaway horse. She was in a buggy and the horse spooked and took off, and she was killed by crashing the buggy. And she had one child. His name was Wilbur. I was named after him. Wilbur was a very successful businessman in a town not too far from Ward. A very prosperous town. He in some sort of retail business. I'm not sure just which. He was married to Lula Parkman. Lula was the talkingest woman you ever met in your life. She was a delightful person, but she always has an opinion on any subject, So I was pretty quiet around Lulu because we called her Lulu. She was Lula Parkman, Lulu, and she had one daughter named Alice. Alice was a real charmer, and the apple of Lulu's eye. Lulu just worshiped Alice. So Lulu would dominate every conversation, you know. And she was she was hell bent on keeping me from drinking. Oh God, she had this sort of temperance unit working on me all the time. So she was afraid I was going to be a drunk, but she was a temperance nut, and when Alice got to the age of going to high school, they moved to the little town of Johnston, which is about 2,000 people, and she wanted to go to a larger town. She'd get a better education. And then when she finished high school, Lulu moved up to Chapel Hill, North Carolina, for the University of North Carolina, which was a mighty fine school. And Lulu set up a boarding house to take care of her, and paid her way through school, running a boarding house, which is terrific. And then the next wife was the mother of Roland, who was my kind of the head man of our family when I was growing up. Roland's mother died in childbirth, so Arthur's first two wives passed away in very unfortunate circumstances. And then his third wife had tuberculosis. TB was a terrible disease in those days. A lot of people died of tuberculosis. And Sister Nanny contracted TB and went to a sanitarium for years. About the only thing they knew to treat tuberculosis was fresh air and rest. So she stayed in bed all the time with the windows wide open. That was the treatment for TB. It wasn't until they developed streptomycin, that they were able to combat TB with antibiotics. And TB is not a very prevalent disease anymore. So that's the third wife. The third wife had several kids. George, Dixie Doodad, George, Harry, Buck, and Sister Nanny. That was it. Those four kids were in their teens when Mother came on the scene, and she mothered them along. And so he finally passed away. He passed away when I was about 2. And my sister Mary was about 1. And not much developed from that. After he passed away, Mother depended upon Roland to look after her, and she later began to run a little boarding house to keep the teachers and this sort of thing. And so we had a pretty tough life as kids, you know. But it was a happy family. We had a lot of love from that mother.